I mean, I think it just boils down to like real customer service,
Mm.
like a pharmacy, and they're a part of the community, and they're dealing with all the people that need, medicine's urgent, right? People have to get this stuff. So when you give them your word that this is going to go and it's going to be there tomorrow, you need to follow through on that. And then we saw so many people just if they didn't have a certain volume, or they weren't the biggest company, or they weren't considered what was a good customer by certain 3PLs, they just were getting second class service. So with our industry coming from pharma, you really can't survive if you don't give exemplary customer service. So that's all we know. And we were even told by some consultants very early on when we were learning about the 3PL world, like not to give personal service and not to accept smaller accounts below a certain threshold. And that just, we don't do business that way. I mean, we value customers, the lifeblood of any business. And we know that even some of the biggest companies start small, and everyone has to start somewhere. So we don't look down on shippers if if they're not already established or they don't have a certain package volume.
Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and I am your host, Blythe Brumleve. We've got another great show for you today because I'm happy to welcome in Dave Gulas. He is the president and co-founder of EZDC 3PL, an agent for SPI Logistics, and also, as if he doesn't have enough on his plate, he's a podcast host of Beyond Fulfillment. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi, Blythe. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I always like to get people's background into how they joined the logistics industry, because it's typically not through, going to college. It's, somebody from somebody else refers you, or a family member refers you. So what's your story? How'd you get into logistics?
Oh boy. So I've been in sales my whole career, my whole adult life. I've always been in sales in some capacity. And for much of that time, I was in the medical and the pharmaceutical industry. And then gradually worked my way up in terms of sales management, into an executive role at a small business. And that involved a lot of logistics, just in terms of, it was a distributor model. So just constantly buying and selling product. And you're selling to independent pharmacies, so everything's urgent, everything's going overnight. You're dealing with small business owners, and things go wrong all the time. So constantly dealing with the logistics end of it, being out in the warehouse. Did this come in? It's got to go turn right around and go out here, and pushing the warehouse workers to receive stuff quicker and get it out quicker, and constantly being involved. And then dealing with the salespeople too, to help them get their deals, consummated, and, just constantly juggling all those balls. And in late 2022, a good friend of mine from the industry and we saw a big gap in the market, just numerous e-commerce shippers that we knew were having a lot of problems with their 3PL. And, I always, I see it was often because of the whole COVID boom. There was a big imbalance of supply and demand, where the big e-commerce spike, and a lot of people, like smaller people, got pushed out or just weren't getting the right service. There was a lot of complacency. So we saw an opportunity, and we had space, and we said, why don't we just open up an e-commerce 3PL? Because we think our brand of customer service from the pharma industry, which is going the extra mile, high touch, always being available, late ship cutoff times, all that type of thing, could translate well, and we could carve out a nice niche. So we jumped in and did it. And 18 months later or so, here we are.
Oh, that's amazing. So you probably, because from a lot of companies I've spoken to, they talk about sort of the COVID was like the line of demarcation. And so they had one business plan before COVID, but and then they have another one after COVID. And so you kind of took advantage of, what the new market sort of looks like. How do you think your pharmaceutical experience helped you with the launch of the new company? I mean, you mentioned, problem solving is just really at the core of that, and trying to get those shipments on time, and communications. Is that, am I just oversimplifying it?
No, I mean, I think it just boils down to like real customer service.
Mm.
You know, because like a pharmacy, and they're a part of the community, and they're dealing with all the people that need, medicine's urgent, right? People have to get this stuff. So when you give them your word that this is going to go and it's going to be there tomorrow, you need to follow through on that. And then we saw so many people just, if they didn't have a certain volume, or they weren't the biggest company, or they weren't considered what was a good customer by, certain 3PLs, they just were getting second class service. So with our industry coming from pharma, you really can't survive if you don't give exemplary customer service. So that's all we know. And we were even told by some consultants very early on, when we were learning about the 3PL world, like not to give personal service and not to accept smaller accounts below a certain threshold. And that just, we don't do business that way. I mean, we value customers, the lifeblood of any business. And we know that even some of the biggest companies start small, and everyone has to start somewhere. So we don't look down on shippers if if they're not already established, or they don't have a certain package volume.
I love that because, as we're mentioning COVID, there were so many small businesses that got started up when people are working from home. They have maybe a little bit of extra time, and so they can start those side hustles. And so it sounds like maybe a lot of your customers are some of the, the smaller to mid-size, or, I guess maybe give us a sense of what your customer makeup is. Is it mostly pharmaceuticals? We mentioned e-commerce. So what kind of falls under that umbrella for you?
Yeah, it's all e-commerce with the 3PL side. So it's refreshing to not have to get a license for everywhere you want to ship, like in pharma. So yeah, it's all e-commerce, and it's a variety of things, from apparel to beauty to nutritional supplements to home goods, various things like that. And yeah, we work with startups. Some are just getting out there, and then some are established and have high package volumes as well. So it's a mix of them, and we just want to make sure it's the right opportunity for us. But we're very open to talking to people, even if they're not established companies.
And so, as I was listening to your conversation with Kevin over at the New Warehouse podcast, and you mentioned that switching. I think your words were switching 3PLs is such a pain in the butt for e-commerce companies. I think I would paraphrasing a little bit there, but why is it such a pain in the butt for some of these companies to switch their providers? What are they experiencing that's causing them to switch?
Well, it's ironic too, because most of our customer base have come from another 3PL that they haven't been happy with. So yeah, I mean, it's just a hassle, just kind of like, just like moving at home, right? You have to move all your stuff from one place to another. It's a hassle. It's expensive. And we've even seen it firsthand, to where, the old 3PL just kind of boxes their stuff up like they don't care, and, just shoves it out the door. And us as the new 3PL have a mess on our hands. So we've seen that happen. So, no one wants to leave a warehouse. It's a big deal, but at the same time, people, their business is everything to them. So they want to be with, and as 3PLs, we are an extension of that brand's business. I mean, that's a very serious responsibility. So, we want to make sure that we treat them properly. We treat them with the most respect, and all the orders go out on time. And if there's a problem, we deal with it promptly. And again, we don't, granted, right there, you want to be efficient, and you want to have processes in place to make sure everything can run smoothly in the best way possible. But even for customers that aren't at the highest, package volume, we still treat them the same way we treat our largest customers. So we treat every customer with respect, and we want to make sure their issues are solved as quickly as possible.
Now, for you, for your company, it sounds like a lot of it is in from reading your website. It's mostly sort of warehouse fulfillment based as 3PL services. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually brands will rent space in our warehouse, and then we'll connect to their Shopify or whatever platform they're on. And then the orders will flow in, and we'll fulfill.
And so are you, I guess, able to see sort of market fluctuations happening within your own, sort of DC centers? where how it's affecting Shopify customers or Shopify shippers?
Um, we're a young company, so we're still, growth. And I mean, we've seen big sales over the weekends, and it's not really the market as a whole. It's just really customer specific. So,
Hmm.
we're still kind of in a very, um, what's the way I would describe it? Just very much in a growth mode. We're continually onboarding customers and getting everything set up and getting their orders, out the door and up and running. And it's really just the individual customers, how they operate their business, what we see.
What does, I guess, sort of a typical onboarding process look like when you have a new customer? Is it setting up the shipments from their old 3PL provider to the new locations? What does that onboarding process look like for them?
Well, yeah, I mean, every customer is different, so we just want to make sure we have a thorough understanding of their business, of their process, and make sure we both have clear expectations about what the relationship is going to be like, and we let them know our process and what we need from them, and we want to know any special things that they do, for their orders. Sometimes people have a special note that needs to be printed out and included with the order or taped onto a piece of product, and whatever it is. So we just want to make sure we have a thorough understanding of that and what their projected volume is, any specific sales they're doing, and anything else that's important to them. And we want to make sure we give them everything they need to run their business successfully and not have to worry about the fulfillment. And that's really the biggest value that we offer, because also too we deal with brands that are fulfilling in house, and then they reach a certain point where it's time to outsource fulfillment. And we've seen firsthand where people say, wow, thank you so much, I have so much more time, so much more freedom, and you guys are doing a great job. I don't have to think about packing orders and going to the post office every day and all this, or I don't have to manage employees in the warehouse type of thing. So we just want to make sure that we do our part to make that fulfillment process as seamless as possible for the brand.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com.
What do you think has been the biggest learning curve since starting your company?
Um, you know, we really thought from pharma, and there was a lot of great experience. We really thought we knew logistics pretty well, and then getting into an actual e-com 3PL, you realize how much you don't know.
Hmm.
So it's just really having to learn fast and you know talk to a lot of different experts. And there's so much collaboration that goes on within logistics because there's so many different facets of it, and you can't be an expert in everything. So we've been able to just network very well and partner with a lot of different experts we need for various aspects of it, and really just trying to learn and then execute as quick as possible, and then obviously judge the feedback and adjust wherever we need to.
And so during that time frame, when did you decide that? Because as you're leaning on experts and things like that, when did you decide that you wanted to become a freight agent?
Well, so when people hire us for the e-com fulfillment, right, they often, just like outsourcing the logistics, whenever the freight comes along with that, they want us to handle that too, which is fine. And I didn't really know a lot about freight coming in. And, I mean, I like not like the back end of it, right? So people would say, "Hey, I need, these pallets moved from point A to point B. Can you help me out?" And so what had happened at first that I would go out to other freight brokers And several times was just not happy with the service and different aspects of the transaction. And then one time in particular, customer was very upset based on the service. And that was like a light bulb for me. Like, wow, this can't happen, right? I have to find a way to really be able to control the customer experience and facilitate this in a way where I know that, I can impact that, people aren't getting back and stuff's not there and no one knows what's going on, that type of thing. So Joe Lynch, actually, he introduced me to the guys over at SPI, and I found out about their agent model. And it just was the perfect fit because me as a salesperson, I'm always, just obsessed about creating a positive customer experience so I can be customer facing and do all the follow-ups that's needed. And then SPI has such an incredible network and support system where they have a team of experts and they handle all aspects of the transaction, and they give their agents so many tools to be successful. So it just seemed like the perfect fit. And, as soon as I found out about that, I just, I pursued the opportunity, and here we are.
Oh, that's amazing. So you didn't actually maybe you didn't know what you don't know, I guess. And so because of a referral from, shout out to Joe Lynch, great podcaster, the Logistics of Logistics, which I believe you are, by the time this episode releases, that episode that you have with Joe Lynch will be out. So we'll make sure to include that in the show notes in case people want to go give it a listen, because he's one of my favorite podcasters, former guest on the show too. But that's interesting that Joe was the sort of the referral for you to go to SPI, because I take it you maybe didn't know like what to look for, what to search for online in order to solve that problem for yourself.
Yeah, not at all. And funny thing about Joe too, when we first opened up and I was networking, and I talked to, I don't even remember who it was, but they said, "Oh, you're over in Michigan. You should talk to Joe Lynch." I said, "Okay, great. Who's Joe Lynch?" And I looked him up. I said, "Oh, wow, okay." And his cell phone number is like online. So I literally just called him out of the blue, and he was on a walk, and he talked to me for like like a half hour, gave me all kinds of advice. And we've been friends ever since. But and then all that time later, he introduced me to SPI, and I was just on a show the other day. And just amazing what one relationship can lead you to, I guess, is the point of that.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like it was such a perfect fit for you to be able to make that transition over to SPI, where they take care of all of those pain points for you. You can probably keep, more of those margins too, and control the customer experience where, some of your customers were facing some other frustrations. So that's super cool to hear that. I didn't know that. We briefly talked before we hit record, but that's super cool to learn that Joe made that introduction for you. Because I had a whole slew of questions, I'll be honest, that I was going to ask. So what did you search for online? What were your pain points beforehand? But it sounds like you just called Joe and Joe just handled it for you. He solved the problem for you.
Yeah. And, again, the biggest thing too is just for the customer, right? Like if we're going to refer someone, we want to make sure that they're solid and they're going to do the right thing. And just being able to have that relationship with SPI and the way they operate is first class. So yeah.
Yeah,
Glad
I
to be a part
co-sign
of
that. I think, anybody who listens to this show probably already knows that. So I won't, beat that. Well, I guess I will beat the SBI drum a lot, because they've been a big supporter of mine. First podcast sponsor still to, this day, and lucky enough to call some of them, at the SPI team friends. And it's just been a great relationship. So it's really cool to hear that someone else has, joined them recently too, and had that, very similar experience. So that's awesome. Let's talk about the content marketing side of things, because you have a podcast called Beyond Fulfillment. So tell us how that came to be. How did you start the podcast before the company, or maybe at the same time, or give us that backstory?
Yeah. So funny thing too is when, from pharma, I was never even on LinkedIn, right? Like it was just a different type of market where everyone knew who everyone was. There might have been 100 people selling the same thing, and you're selling to the same 20,000 plus pharmacies, and you would buy lists and you would know everyone and you would make calls, and that was the business. Right. And then I get into logistics and I realized people have to find you. And so I wasn't visible online. I didn't have like a public personal brand. And I realized that too when I went to an IWA conference, and it's like, wow, like this, no one knows who I am, right? I need to find a way to get visible. So started posting on LinkedIn and just figuring out as I went, and started to build some traction and grow like that. And I was on Kevin's podcast, Kevin Lawton at Home Delivery World in the summer, it was like last June or something. And that episode, he gave us the video. So, my team would post some of the shorts and we'd always get a lot of engagement. It would really do well. So I started to notice the power of a podcast from that. And along with that, I was doing a lot of networking, and all the challenges and things that I was experiencing as a founder, like the biggest way I was able to learn and deal with it and just find solutions was from talking to other people. And then just one day, the idea popped in my head. It's like, wow, you should start a podcast, because if you could have these conversations where you're getting so much value and then you put them on a public forum, obviously you're going to benefit, the guest is going to benefit, but also the audience can benefit. And it's really a truly win-win. And so I got the idea, and my team thought it was a good idea. So I literally put the announcement out right away, and I got great response. And then Matt Fain from Pop Capacity, I don't know if you know him, but
Yeah.
immediately he reached out and he said, man, I think that's a great idea. I'd love to be your first guest. And so I literally booked that as soon as I could. And at this time too, there's nothing built. I don't even know anything about a podcast. And, like my marketing team said, don't worry, we'll show you how to do it. So I just started over Zoom. I didn't even have a mic in the beginning. And I was like Googling how to do a proper interview. And
I love it. I love this so much.
And so I just did it. Right. And, I just did it and kept doing it. And that's always been one thing I've been very good at, is consistency. And then once I did it and it felt great and got good response, I just continued to keep doing it over and over again. And I found a good system to find guests, to book guests, to have the interviews. And then, my team handles like the back end and the editing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just, it's been a great experience. It's done wonders for the business too, just in terms of helping us win business. And I was telling Joe this yesterday. It's like it's not directly attributable to the podcast, but I mean, the way I look at it is, so many 3PLs operate out there as faceless, nameless brands, right? Where, you're sending your goods somewhere, but do you really know who this person is? So if they see me every day posting videos and I'm all interviewing all these people and I'm constantly visible online and they get to know who I am as a person, that automatically builds trust, even if we're not, physically speaking all the time. Like they can just see the consistency and see that I'm out there and see that I'm not hiding, and that, if there's a problem, I'm not hard to find. Right. So I think that's been a big inflection point, which is helping us win more business. Just that online visibility, so that letting people see who I am.
I feel like you just wrote a testimonial for why every business owner should start a podcast, because people get so caught up in the myth of perfection, especially when starting a show. And I love that you just took the bull by the horns and just went, just dive headfirst into it, because you're right. You're not going to know everything right away. The biggest fear is from just the lack of starting. You want every episode to be perfect, but it's not going to be perfect until you start doing it. And so I think it's amazing that you had a podcaster and Joe Lynch make the referral to SPI, and then you had another podcaster and Kevin with New Warehouse, and he is inspiring you to start up your own show. And then now it's helping you communicate with your customers, provide that value to provincial or potential leads in the future. And so how do you take us behind the scenes a little bit? What does sort of your content creation process look like? How are you prioritizing guests? Is it kind of, the guests you would like to do business with and learn from, or, subject matter experts that, maybe work in other parts of 3PL fulfillment? How do you approach, who you're going to talk to and why?
Yeah. So it really started out, and it's still based on like the entrepreneurial journey. because so many times, especially like, growing a startup, and I knew it was going to be hard. And I always have that attitude. I'll figure it out. Right. I'll just keep working at it. But it was just so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And, sometimes you just need help. You need to lean on other people. You need to hear someone else's story. And that really helped me out a lot. And just having other people's perspective on things. Right. So that's where I thought too, like, if I can talk to not only logistics, because those are many of the entrepreneurs I know, but other industries, because like an entrepreneur is going to learn from anything, right? If you see a sales tactic, and I would always do that even in my sales career too. If I saw something that worked in this industry or from this position or this job, and I can apply it over here, I mean, why wouldn't you do that, right? You're always testing things and trying things out. So I thought for entrepreneurs, this would be perfect, where I could bring those stories of how people did it. And I've had a wide range of guests from different industries, from coaches and copywriters and investment people, and just all types of other industries. So I always just like to hear their story, the struggles, the challenges they dealt with, some unique ways they overcame it. What was the hardest part? What's the family life? Just all these different things, because there's so much that you deal with when you're running a company, that I thought it would be a much needed, I guess, light to help people hear some stories from other people that are going through the same challenges.
Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. TIE equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battle stations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo.
Do you have a favorite story or guest or topic from your time as being a podcaster?
Yeah, so one of them, my guest, this episode too, has by far the most views, because this guy he's like a unicorn, right? He's a very special guy. His name's Brian Esposito, and he's been a lifelong entrepreneur, particularly in the beauty business. And so his story too, where he was growing his companies, and then he got, I think it was 2016, he got hit by a drunk driver, right? And he was like real messed up. He was heavily concussed and he couldn't work. And at that point too, he was like one of these entrepreneurs that's like vital to his business. And a lot of the people he had around that time were maybe not the right people, and maybe, just kind of not pulling their weight. So when he couldn't work, everyone that he had around him kind of abandoned him, and he went like millions of dollars in debt. And he just had this crazy downward spiral. And anyways, he worked through it. He never filed bankruptcy. He came back. He got healthy again. And long story short, he paid everyone back. He's now got equity in 100 plus companies. He's the CEO of a thriving company called Diamond Lakes Minerals, which is really changing investment with regards to blockchain and that type of technology. And he's just, he's what a real comeback story is all about. And just hearing him talk and hearing his story, and it's just inspiring. And I've gotten to know him much better, and we've become friends. And anyways, he's got a huge following, and he's very engaged with his network. So that episode did really well. So that's one that sticks out to me. And that's, anytime you're going through a tough time, I just think of something like that. And it's like, wow, right? Like
Could be worse.
Could be a lot worse. Yeah.
Now, so that's such a great story. And I imagine that once you hear a story like that, then that is the constant reminder to your point, as to keep going, to keep pursuing new challenges and to keep tackling them. And then, as you've had these different conversations with all of these different types of guests, have you taken any of those learnings and applied it to your own business? I think you mentioned something about, sales tactics from another industry. Is there any conversations like that that are helping you in sort of the sales and marketing aspect of your show, which is essentially your marketing and sales plan too?
Yeah, I mean, there's like literally I learn every day,
Mm.
right? From all types of sources. So yeah, with logistics especially too, the one thing I had to get used to was just the sales cycle too, because pharma, it's very transactional, it's very quick. People need stuff right away. So things move, they're always moving fast. Where logistics, oftentimes it can be the opposite, right? If someone's gonna switch warehouses, they may take months and months to make a decision. And there's all sorts of things that need to align and challenges and whatnot. So yeah, I've definitely learned just in terms of like the cadence and the follow-up and some of the different aspects of the sales cycle. And, that's been probably the biggest adjustment for coming to the logistics industry.
Now, how are you using social media to, I've heard you mention LinkedIn a couple times. I imagine that that's playing a really big role in connecting with those, current customers, prospective customers, and also your guests.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, virtually every guest I've booked, I think, has come via a LinkedIn relationship. So yeah, LinkedIn's been huge. I'm on some of the others, but LinkedIn is really the one I spend my most time on. And yeah, it's just networking is so powerful, right? Because the world is so big, so many people are, uh, interconnected, and even if you're not in the same place. So I'm always just trying to network, collaborate with people online, and always trying to find our ideal customers. And social media is just a phenomenal way to do that. And particularly as the face of the company, as I am, right? You really need to be out there and letting people know who you are, and just continuing to move your business forward.
Now, does that look like, daily postings to LinkedIn, podcast clips? What does it look like from like a tactical perspective? How do you prioritize those types of things, right? Because that's what I hear from a lot of founders is that I want to start a podcast or I want to start, creating content on LinkedIn. I just don't know if I have the time for it. So how are you finding the time for it or prioritizing the time for it?
Yeah, well, that's excellent point, right? So I partnered with a boutique firm. They're called Hicks Marketing,
Hmm.
and they've been just phenomenal, and we work very well together. And it's two women. They both have a long career within marketing and editing and that type of thing. So I just batch create a lot of different content and a lot of different. I have ideas flowing to me like constantly, and so. Now, especially because it's so busy with the business, I'll literally block out time to just come up with ideas and write them out. And I send them to my team in a very messy format. And then we meet once a week and they manage the content calendar and all that sort of thing. But that's how I found time to do it. And that's what's worked best for me. And I'm constantly in touch with them, and we have like a high level meeting once a week for like an hour and go over everything. So just try to streamline it, make it as efficient as possible. And yeah, so right now it's probably 2, 3, 4 times a day that we're posting, just
Oh,
depending
wow.
on the day. Yeah, and a lot of podcast clips and just a lot of, I'm into personal development. I'm into, always just trying to be my best self. So, I post other motivational type of stuff or quotes or, whatever. So that's, I just try to do things that align with me that other people would resonate with as well.
Now, so marketing has changed so much in just the last handful of years. So I'm curious as to based on everything that you know now, where are the areas that you want to play around with marketing sales wise in logistics versus stuff that you want to stay a little bit away from? Like what is working for you that you'd like to do more of, and then what's not really working that you need to either revisit or just cut out altogether?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried different outbound approaches and it's been okay, but it's really just getting in front of the right people, and
Mm.
you never really know, like particularly in our segment, right? You just really never know where they're going to come from or when, or right. It's got to be the right time as well, right? It's got to be the right fit at the right time. So the more you can be visible out there with your online presence, and for me, it's through the podcast or it's being a guest on a podcast like this. Of course, trade shows have been great for us, and it's hard to point to one specific area, but we've had like our online presence have grown so much. I mean, it's multiple leads every week, and many of them we've converted that just find us. And sometimes in the rush of everything too, I don't even always ask people, how'd you find out about us? But somehow they're finding us and they're contacting us. So the more I can just be visible and, let people know who I am and what I'm about, what we're about, that's what I find is working the best to continue to grow.
And so I would imagine that that's tremendous insight, because I feel like I tell people all the time, like, the value of the podcast is creating those relationships and then distributing it out to your audience so that you stay consistently on top of mind. So it sounds like you're doing that exact same thing. You are reaping the rewards from it. So give us a little preview, I guess, of what the rest of this year looks like for you. Are you prioritizing trade shows? What does it look like to, prepare some of your customers for, the holiday season? How do you sort of map out what your priorities look like from a content perspective to help that audience for the rest of the year?
Yeah. So for the rest, we're figuring out trade shows for Q3 right now, looking at that. Obviously preparing for Q4. We're in the middle of a big software upgrade at the moment. So we're heavily focused on that and just making sure everything can run seamless with all of our customers. And then we're in the middle of numerous onboardings as well. So same thing, staying in touch with everyone. And I mean, the most, obviously we're always wanting to find new business and continue to grow. And, eventually we'll have more spaces too. We have a Maryland location. We're opening up New Jersey as well. So more spaces, but the biggest thing and the guiding principle really is just helping our customers win. So everyone that we have that signed on and they put their trust in us, we want to help them be successful and have a seamless fulfillment operation. So that's top priority, and just continuing to be out there and connect with more people that want to take the headache out of fulfillment and being, talking to them, and if it's the right solution, then being that solution for them.
Love it. Yeah, that I think it's going to be we're in for an interesting Q3 and Q4 this year. I have no idea how things are going to turn out, especially in an election year. It's one of those, like, just wait and see. But I mean, if you're getting leads coming through the door, then that means you're doing something right. And so kudos to you. And a couple last questions here. If another founder in logistics is thinking about, starting a podcast, what advice would you give to them?
I would just say, just start, right? Because I've talked to several people, like much more established and much, bigger companies and longer tenure, and, people that I would really look up to. And they've said, wow, I wanted to start and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get out of my own way, or I didn't know how to do it, or I bought equipment and I just haven't been able to do it. So I would just say, you just got to start, like just start and seize on that momentum and just get some momentum and keep going. And it's really like, listen, if I can do it, right? I had no podcasting background, no media background. I just decided to do it and kept doing it. And now we have like a real podcast, and we've dropped 38 episodes and have a bunch more recorded and continuing to book more. And so I would say, like, if you just start and keep showing up, good things are going to happen. And that's really the secret. If you want to even call that a secret, that's what you got to do.
Love it. Love to hear it. All right, Dave, where can folks follow you, follow your work, the podcast, become a customer, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, I'm always on LinkedIn. You can DM me there, connect. We're just launching a new site, davegulas.com, which will have links to everything I do. So you can put that in the show notes. My email is dave@EZDC3PL. You can always email me if you want to talk. And then check out the podcast. It's on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. It's called Beyond Fulfillment. So yeah, check that out and definitely like and subscribe if you found value from the content.
DaveGulas.com. I'm just adding that to my show notes to make sure that I can have all of those links handy for folks so they can go and make sure that they get subscribed, especially if they are in the fulfillment space and want to learn more about the challenges that are around that. And hopefully you can offer them some advice and help them in their journey. So Dave, this was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Blythe. Appreciate it.